Hey guys, this is Montel here, and welcome to another edition of Let's Be Blunt with Montel. We're so excited about today's show, and of course, coming to you sequestered away in my home in Miami, Florida. But I've got a guest joining us from Ohio, and that guest is the founder of Goldleaf, a science-forward printing company for cannabis growers, patients, and enthusiasts. Goldleaf empowers people by helping them better understand their interactions with the cannabis plant and works to make the subject more approachable to new audiences. He's a former volunteer for the Marijuana Policy Project, a group that I worked with very near and dear to my heart, worked with early on back in the early 2000s, and has a history supporting veterans education and also access to medical marijuana. Guys, welcome Mr. Charles Mcelroy. Charles, thanks so much for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you, Montel. I'm really stoked to be here talking to you. Appreciate it.
I'm really excited. So, I want to start with something. We're going to back up. But let's start first. Goldleaf, I think you kind of hit the nail right dead on the head with the fact that I think the most important deficiency in this entire industry, in this entire movement, has been education, education, education. We have been failing miserably at that, especially even now, while we're in the midst of this pandemic. I don't see anyone attempting to come to the fore and take advantage of really, when I say take advantage, but utilize a time while people are at home looking for content to take the time to educate those consumers out there, those generations out there that have been fed misinformation over the last 100 so years. Mm-hmm. Nobody's even attempting to do that. And I think that's to the detriment of this industry. But that's what you really seek to do through Goldleaf, is it not?
Yeah, that's our sweet spot, making education, something that is approachable and even interesting to folks who may have been adverse to it before. And yeah, we love kind of trying to reinvent it in interesting ways and showcasing it in ways that people like to engage with it.
Absolutely. I think that what do you think about the fact that I don't understand why all of a sudden, the industry went brain dead? As if said enough to provide the consumer with enough information. I see all these conferences around the country, conference after conference after conference after conference, and all of them seem to be perpetuating B2B information, trying to they can get their part of the B rather than try to reach the C, which is the consumer, which is going to drive the B.
Yeah, that's a interesting question. Like I think like the B side, the businesses do have an opportunity to be the leaders in the education. And we work with a lot of businesses to try and outfit their teams, their bud tenders, their staff, to be able to have those meaningful conversations with patients and customers. But the struggle there is just the crazy high turnover. So you're right. I think the end goal is to go directly to the consumer, directly to the patient, and have them do their own diligence. Cannabis is unique in the sense that a doctor cannot prescribe. They can't dose you exactly. Everybody's different. Everybody's endocannabinoid system is different. So there is an element of experimentation and an element of self-reliance that you have to adopt as a patient. And, getting educated is kind of part of that. But a lot of folks will ask these questions to the bud tenders, to the folks at the dispensary, and they're not always maybe prepared to answer some of those deeper questions. Goldleaf tries to help, but we can't nail it.
And I find it really, really crazy interesting the fact that years ago when there was an echinacea craze, years ago when there was a D3 craze, years ago when we look at nutraceuticals or homeopathic remedies, people will, without hesitation, go up online, try their best to figure out what they can for themselves before they go out and buy one of those products. But when it comes to cannabis, it's like, we sit back and play brain dead.
Yeah. Well, I think the murkiness there is the fact that cannabis is enjoyable to a lot of people. and so it's maybe seen as slightly different than some of those other products like echinacea or ginger or something. Um, but that, yeah, I don't have a great answer there.
All right, well, okay. Well, let's back up for a second. Why don't you tell
Yeah.
us and take how you got involved in this industry? You've got a bachelor of science in engineering from Ohio University, and you got an MBA, or you were on an MBA track at Miami University in business, and you shifted that over to cannabis. Why and how?
Yeah, I've always been passionate about this. It's kind of a perfect melding of things that I'm interested in. I think I'm really good. Like, I've got an analytical mind, but I'm also very creative. I've always kind of operated in the creative space, and this is kind of a marriage of the two. My favorite part about it is operating with perception, being able to take these subjects and make them beautiful and approachable in not the classic cannabis aesthetic. So deviating from that and showing the science behind it to folks in a way that is something they haven't seen before. It's presented in this mature clinical kind of minimalist modern vibe that we found it draws them in, and they don't realize that it's maybe cannabis info until they kind of get closer and they start looking at the infographic or whatever it is. And it's disarming to people, and I love that. I love doing our part for the normalization, for the reprogramming of the validity of cannabis as medicine. And that was what attracted me to kind of create Goldleaf. It's intentionally ancillary. We don't technically ever touch the plant, but we're a cannabis company. We still get hit with all the red tape that a flower producer would. But technically we're protected under the First Amendment, because what we do is simply communicate facts and information, and we try to do it in as pleasant of a way as possible. And we want to kind of bridge those gaps. It is a polarizing subject, and we want to try and break through to folks who may have previously made their mind up about it based on inaccurate information during the time of prohibition. And yeah, so that's a large part of why I got into Goldleaf is to be a vehicle for that type of communication. And yeah, I mean, generally, I've been interested in cannabis because of my own kind of health issues with autoimmune problems. I have lots of family who are veterans who came back from everything from Vietnam to Afghanistan with Agent Orange, PTSD, and they've utilized that in a helpful way. And
So, but Gold Leaf provides printed materials and information for both B2B,
mhm,
B to B to I. When I say I, B to business information, but
mhm.
but information. So you provide multi-tiered, multi-level communication tools to try to get the messaging across about what cannabis is all about. Is that right? Is that the kind of nutshell?
Yeah, specifically, we make journals that are templated and guided, and then we make a lot of smaller educational pieces printed, and then art prints, artwork that are mostly infographics and educational. So they'll look great in a home. They'll draw people in. It'll be a great conversation starter. But if I'm being honest, most of our clients with the art prints are going to be doctors' offices, professionals in the space, people who like to kind of geek out on cannabis, and they like looking at the science behind it in interesting ways. So yeah, pretty much we live in the printed world, and that was also intentional. I think that tactile, the nature of it, the analog tool forces you to be a little bit more mindful when you kind of read and interact with the plant. That's one of the reasons why I really like a journal for patients as opposed to like an app. Apps have a lot of distractions. There's maybe security risks, And, frankly, uh, writing things down is going to force your brain to recompose thoughts. It'll force you to be more mindful about what you're feeling and what you're thinking. And it's going to hopefully allow you to better record your experience so you can have those meaningful conversations with your doctor or caregiver, or just yourself when you're looking back at your past entries to find out what has worked for you or what maybe didn't.
It's great. It's great. So, I mean, now, right now, you are providing materials all over the world. Is that right?
Yeah, we don't have any limitations on where we ship, and we do have customers in every continent apart from Antarctica. So
Yeah, no penguins.
yeah, right.
Right. Well, now let's talk a little bit about the fact that you said it earlier on. For some reason, you're looked at as if you are a full leaf cannabis company. Why is that?
That is a great question. I think because in the digital space, our website is full of terms that are deemed dangerous, or like we can't talk about the opioid epidemic without using words like opium or heroin or something. So same with cannabis. We aim toward the scientific vernacular whenever possible, but we're saying things like marijuana and hash and stuff like that in some of our articles or some of our content. And so it's bots really that will flag our site, and so we're seen as the same, with Google, with Facebook, with Amazon. We can't run any digital ads.
When did the word marijuana or hash become an illegal word? I understand that. I understand that we're dealing with a Schedule One drug, and the drug itself. If you were to say go out and buy hash or buy this particular hash, I understand why there might be a moratorium on that. But I don't understand why you can't even talk about the term hash.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Montel. It's crazy. The first year we were around, we fought that fight all the time. But the fact is all of those digital systems are decentralized, and there's no single person in power. So while we would make progress on maybe a post or something like that, the second that we make an edit to it, it gets fed through their compliance again, and the bots will flag it, and we have to start all over with our attempt to get it greenlit again. So it just burns so much admin time for us. We just can't win that fight, and it's because there's nobody in charge, and a lot of these digital entities have to conform to the federal rules, just because they don't want to risk them getting in trouble for something on a federal level. And it's really frustrating. I've never spoken with anybody about this where they're not like, oh yeah, I see. Oh, okay, you're right. This isn't, you're not selling drugs. Okay, we'll whitelist this. And then the next day it's hidden again, or blocked, or we get threatened that our accounts will get shut down or something like that. It's the same kind of song and dance that a lot of cannabis companies just deal with. And in that regard, we're kind of aligned with all the others, because we definitely feel their pain. But there's not really a way out of it for us until those rules change on a federal level, and places like Facebook and Google can update their practices.
Have you noticed that during this pandemic and during all the emphasis being placed on the pandemic, it seems as if, and I'm just now, I've read different reports about, the cannabis deliveries industry has kind of burgeoned and is growing quickly in some places. In other places, I hear that, dispensaries are basically shut down. You have liquor stores that are considered essential, services, whereas cannabis stores or medical cannabis stores are not considered an essential service. So do you think that this little break that we're having right now during this pandemic is really doing much more greater damage to the cannabis industry than anybody actually thinks?
Yeah, that I think about that every morning, Montel. I think the sweeping, like the trickle down of this economic shutdown is slowly going to be felt by everybody eventually. Everybody, even people who are insulated. Cannabis companies were sort of insulated at the front end, but they're even feeling it now because a lot of the things that they rely on are not maybe considered essential. I can tell you for our perspective, like we work with a lot of clients. We do a lot of custom design work. Most of that stuff has been paused or canceled due to coronavirus. Education is not something that somebody at home is necessarily looking to buy into right now, which is surprising.
Now that's where not that I'm trying to differ with you, but that's where I think, in some ways this industry is missing the boat. They're at home. They're looking for content. They're looking for it. And, because we haven't offered it, they wouldn't think to themselves, oh, let me go, since I got the time now, let me study a little bit and figure out why this has been such a big deal.
Right.
I think we would gravitate to the topic more if we were providing it to them right now.
Yeah, I agree.
I've noticed that, I think when we do, especially I believe, this podcast that I'm doing right now with you is going to be very, very, very well received because people are looking for information.
Yeah. And, the one thing I'd add to that, Montel, is you're right. There's certainly an opportunity here. A lot of people do have downtime, and what better way to spend that downtime than learn about your own body and your own health. I think the reprogramming that needs to happen, in addition to having those educational avenues opened up, is letting people know that should be a priority for them. Like learn about your own endocannabinoid system and how you can possibly treat your ailments or your stress or your sleep with this plant. So it's really just a perspective. Like having somebody be open to learning is like the first hurdle, and then having the content to kind of chew on would be the second one. And everybody's different.
The dreams, fill the dreams dreamer, but if you build it, they will come. I think it's just like in every aspect of medicine in this country. It is the consumer that drives the doctors to writing prescriptions rather than the doctors driving the consumer. Their pharmaceutical industry goes around the country and knocks on doctors' doors and tries to get them to pump a drug all day long. But it's not until they do the advertisement on television that entices the consumer to go and ask the question, do they actually get sales? So it's like cart before horse, egg before chicken. I think in this case, right now, heck, I'd love to team up with you and your group and say, let's make a concerted effort right now to make sure people understand that there's educational information out there. I mean, I go back and think back on, study that I read. There was a study done back, this was back in like 1999, 98, when Clinton was in office, when he had Stafford do, a study, I think it was at the University of Southern California. They studied cannabis effects and were trying to figure out a way to vilify cannabis even more. The study came back and literally flipped the paradigm on them. And doctors came out of that study saying, how egregiously offensive is it that we have banned this product that does so much good? And as a matter of fact, we can't even see that it actually increases, your chances of getting lung cancer. As a matter of fact, there's been one or two studies that have said that there are certain chemicals in the cannabinoids that aren't protective, but seem to block cancer development in the lungs. I'm wondering, I'm just making this, I'm not making a statement, so I don't want anybody out there running around going, Montel just said, Montel did that, Montel just said. What I'm saying is that we don't know if the film layer that happens inside of our lungs using cannabis could be some sort of a barrier to opportunistic infection. I don't know. I'm just saying we don't know because nobody's studying it. And until we do study that, we won't get the answers. However, there are studies out there that has shown that in the past, that should be something I think should be allowed for patients to read, people to be able to get knowledge for themselves. It's just the same way as like right now. Maybe, we should mix the smoking and vaping and go more to an edible world. and why not? And some people say, "Well, I hate edibles because of X, Y, Z." Well, let's do a little bit more research and see if we can make the edibles a little bit more bioavailable, so that there's not, this lag time between ingestion and the time that you actually feel the response. I worked on a project, or a product when I had my own product in the marketplace, where I was using certain terpenes, and I'm not going to give away my secret sauce, but some secret sauce that seemed to help speed up the bioavailability of the cannabinoids that we were consuming. I think that there's still opportunity in that right now. And unless the patient or the consumer is aware of that, there's no way for us to give them an idea that they need to even go ask.
Right. Yeah, another frustrating thing is that if you were to type in that question into Google, you would not get reliable results. It's just a testament to the fractured nature of education in our country and the world. But folks in Ohio have a very different understanding of cannabis than folks in Florida or California. That's one of the challenges that we faced is the vernacular varies. People's baseline understanding varies. But
You can go up online and Google and figure out how to make a pipe bomb. Even though if you type in pipe bomb, it won't show you a pipe bomb, but it'll give you can figure out how to navigate through the process to figure out what size pipe, what size metal, what kind of gauge, what kind of explosive do you need to be able to break it up. It to me seems ridiculous that we can provide that kind of information, or we can even allow, some terrorist groups to be able to recruit through Google.
yeah,
We can't allow you to get information that should be your First Amendment right to be able to read information.
yeah. I'll say that it's out there. It's just not going to be your top hits often. And if you want to get the real good stuff, you're going to be looking at like primary source material that is no fun to read. I mean, most people aren't going to be drilling into 40-page medical documents for their answers. So it's translating that into something that is like digestible and has those walk-away bullet points that people are looking for.
Talk a little bit about your involvement with MPP. I was very much involved with MPP. For people out there who don't understand what MPP is, we know our policy project's been around for a long time. As a matter of fact, was founded Peter Lewis and a group back almost 25, 30 years ago. I don't even know, probably 26, 27 years ago that they were founded, and did a lot of work early on, which a lot of people don't give MPP credit for. But back in 2000, 2001, 2, 3, and 4, they were really responsible for going around the country and beating on the doors of legislators and getting some of the original marijuana, some of the original medical marijuana policies actually put in place in multiple states, and they're continuing to work it out.
Right. That's why I loved it. Ohio was on their docket. We're gonna be the first Midwest state to have legalization, and the MPP kind of picked Ohio to lead the charge. And their thinking was that if where Ohio goes, so will Indiana and Kentucky and all of these other Midwestern states. And it probably was true, but what became of that was a very interesting, legal sidestep in our state. Like you said, MPP had a pretty killer batting average as far as their success rate, and that scared a lot of people, a lot of conservatives in our state. And so when they saw the MPP starting to get a foothold, starting to work on this ballot initiative, Ohio did something that no state has done before, and still no other state has. Surprisingly, the conservatives in power passed their own laws legalizing medical. And their idea was that if they did that, it would cause the MPP to leave the state and give up. And that's exactly what happened. Marijuana Policy Project figured we're trying to pass legalization, and through our presence, basically a state run bill came to be. So they kind of achieved sort of their goal. The downside was that this was kind of a political maneuver, and a lot of the folks in power didn't really want uh, cannabis legalization, even for medical. And that's why we have this silly rule still that, yeah, medical cannabis is legal, but you cannot smoke it. Um, and but you know, you can vape it. It's something that is impossible to police. You know, so why be building those types of rules into your policy when, you know, it's just kind of impossible to enforce. You know, again, like this process, this was about 2015 when MPP left, and we started down this road of creating our own legalization without a ballot initiative. So, you know, there was a lot of
Initiative? Was
what's
that
that?
a constitutional initiative?
Yeah, the legislators passed it kind of on their own. So no voters had a say in it. Um, and you know, ideally that's what you want your governor and your elected officials to do. You wanted them to pass laws that are things that you want, and they kind of did that. So in the end, like I'm not knocking them for doing that. You know, me and everybody else in the state just wishes that it would have rolled out a little bit better. It kind of set up not a controlled monopoly, but not that far off from it. So we've got a lot of work to do to kind of clean that up and improve it to where it is helpful to everybody. Because of the limited permitting that they did for grow sites, I'm worried that they're not going to they're not incentivized to grow unique cultivars that have, you know, different cannabinoid and terpene levels that are good for different ailments, because it's not a one size fits all. And so they're instead incentivized by quantity and weight, instead of you know, these niche, yeah, these boutique products that are like, maybe this one is perfect for you know, muscular problems, whereas this one is maybe better for PTSD or something like that. um, there's no incentive for growers to do that. In fact, there's almost an incentive for them not to do that, because if they don't hit their quota, they can risk losing their permit and losing their millions of dollars in escrow as kind of their permit fees. So you know, it's not the greatest rollout, but hey, you know, we technically did it without a ballot initiative, so now we can just improve upon it. At least that's the goal. But yeah, that was you had asked me about the MPP. I worked with them to kind of help with that 2015 initiative before it got kind of stomped out. Um, and that was kind of when I started working on the idea of Goldleaf, and talking to medical professionals and vetting some of my original like journal designs with folks in the medical space.
Well, now, you know, I guess you and like I and like everybody who's trying to get information in this space, try your best to do, and that is to keep up with the most recent scientific data. Now, when those again, here we are in moratorium land. You know, when it comes to pandemic, I'm not sure how much research is being done in this space, but we were getting some significant breakthroughs. And you talked about a little bit different cultivars, different cannabinoids that we now understand have different municipal and functional capabilities. And we know that CBG has now been identified, something I've been talking about for almost 13 years, or no, really for about the last 5 years, I've been talking about CBG. But, you know, CBN, or I'm sorry, CBD, I've been talking about CBD for 16 years. And now we're finally starting to recognize that CBD has a value. But then what happened is I think we shut down the pipeline of information. So now everybody's just stuck on CBD. What do you
Right.
think is, you know, what do you think is going to happen over the next year and a half, maybe 2 years?
Yeah, that's a great question. My answer probably would have been different if we weren't in coronavirus land right now, because you're right. That has the sweeping changes that is going to make on new research and educational establishments. We still don't even know, but yeah, CBD's been like the buzzword of the past couple years. There's over 120 known cannabinoids, way more than that, but at least 120 that have been clearly identified and are being studied. That's a lot. I mean, even with CBD, there's lots of different types of CBD. Um, and you know, they each could potentially have very, very important therapeutic values if isolated. So I think like, yeah, the next steps with kind of research would be like you mentioned, probably in the realm of delivery methods, solving that conundrum of how do you get it into your body quickly without jeopardizing an organ like your lungs or something like that. You know, a lot of people like this sublingual or other, I mean, you know, other mucosal applications. Um, those have seemed to be the frontier for a lot of very specific ailments. Um, and you know, I'm very curious to learn more about you know, as far as research about the kind of the origins of these different cultivars, like the landrace strains. Those are like the original ones. And you know, they show very different terpene concentrations and cannabinoid concentrations. And so I think like the genetic side is very interesting. And furthermore, work like Confident Cannabis does, where they're trying to map the chemical makeups of all of these different plants. And that will help us better understand like how to grow a plant that is perfect for say muscle spasms, where you know you're not having to rely on a lot of like extra processing to get the results you want. You're able to basically just pick and choose a cultivar that is, you know, suited through its parentage to address your ailment, because it you know, it has that chemical cocktail that's maybe perfect for what you're trying to treat.
Well, now, you know, but now we also have this extra, I've got a little bit more time, but we've got this extra monkey wrench that we've thrown into this throne, and that is the hemp world. Now, you know, because we can't say CBD, most people are saying broad spectrum hemp
Yeah.
and or a hemp product. Well, now the hemp products, which have been around since, you know, 40, 50 years, you've been able to get hemp seed protein for 30 years in this country legally without any question or any hesitation. So, in fact, most of the hemp that we were getting pre the hemp bill literally was imported from overseas, that we allowed the importation of, and 99.9% of it came from overseas. Hemp seed protein. I was eating hemp seed protein back in 2000, back in the 90s. And now that there are products on shelves that are calling themselves hemp, broad-based hemp, we have no idea what's in those products. What do you think? Are you doing any education on that right now? Is
Yeah.
that part of your job?
Yeah. We're starting on a series about kind of the differences between hemp and I guess what people call marijuana or cannabis. And we're definitely touching upon that because we, like I said, we work with a lot of businesses, and we do get approached by businesses who want us to kind of fudge the numbers for them. You know, so like a THC free product, that's a, you know, common buzzword now with hemp products, like, hey, this is our THC free oil or
So it doesn't mean THC free. It means THC below 0.03% or 1%, right?
right. So that's kind of the murkiness. They want to maybe utilize some of the talking points of cannabis, but say it's only for their THC free product. And it's just further confusing people. We don't really accept those types of jobs if we're not able to present like true factual info. And but yeah, I think that the hemp market is really exciting, especially where I'm at. Like, we're a stone's throw from Kentucky, which has had hemp pilot programs for a very long time, like 15 years or so. Um, they haven't done much with it yet, but they're starting to now. They're converting a lot of their tobacco farms to hemp. so there's a lot of potential with these like agrarian jobs in Ohio and Kentucky and Indiana, and it's cool. So I'm really interested to see what kind of comes of that with the different hemp products, where they kind of find their niche, what's most helpful. Is it as a something to address sleep or anxiety? Because yeah, hemp is different than cannabis, aka something with higher THC levels. But the broad spectrum, that kind of stuff, THC free, those are unregulated words, like you said, and it's just kind of dangerous, or potentially dangerous and misleading if we don't kind of establish, I guess, like a way to define what that means, and so that those terms are not misused. Because the marketing that I've seen is it's very wishy-washy right now. I think a lot of times it comes from a very good place, but this is like a kind of a gold rush, and there are a lot of people who maybe do not have folks' interest in mind. They're just after like a good business to make money or something, and that's kind of the scary point. We try to address that in a few ways. One, with who we work with, we want to align on our ethics, and then the other is presenting info on questions people are asking. What's the difference? Hemp, cannabis, that kind of thing.
Do you get the same pushback on the social media outlets from when you talk in terms of hemp versus talk in terms of cannabis?
Um, Good question. I don't know. We have been hit with the iron fist before, so I'm kind of hesitant to test the waters. Then again, like, we don't really ever show people smoking or people using. Most of our stuff is very, um, I guess, straightforward, graphical, educational. So we haven't really seen any red tape in the past couple years, but that's because our presentation on social is pretty buttoned up. Um, so I guess I don't have a good answer for that, except that we haven't really tested the waters as far as if we are still limited if we use the word hemp. I have started to see hemp companies successfully advertise on Instagram and Facebook, which was not the case, 3 months ago. So that's progress, and I think it is because they use the word hemp. They never use the word cannabis. But I mean, what a silly difference, I guess, because it's kind of the same thing, especially how they're kind of using it.
Absolutely. So, if you had a crystal ball, what does it look like over the next 2 years?
Yeah, I 2 years. Okay, so assuming we have a great election in November,
Okay. Well, I said 2 years because I think it's going to take us probably a year to get out of this pandemic, and then start moving forward a year after that. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, no, I'd really like to see more. Well, I'd really like to see descheduling cannabis on a federal level. I mean, I think that's a very realistic hope. I don't. Whoever's in power may not want to bite that off right away. I wish they would, but they might not. If they just deschedule it, that would open the floodgates with banking, with insurers, with all this digital stuff we've been talking about. That's the reason. It's because it's a Schedule 1. If it weren't a Schedule 1, that would really be a huge difference. I think that would open up the markets. We would be able to possibly have interstate commerce with it. And I mean, that is when it quadruples in size, the industry as a whole. And I hope we get there. And it's not even going to take a lot. It's just reframing the scheduling of cannabis, decriminalizing it. I hope that I also hope that kind of leads to clemency for some of these folks who are in prison for nonviolent offenses. I mean, it hasn't worked out that way yet necessarily, but that's kind of a totally different subject. But I do hope that will also alleviate some of the strain that's on our incarcerated neighbors for cannabis. So anyway, that's kind of my hope for the short term, the 2-3 year plan. Let's decriminalize and deschedule it, and kind of go from there.
All right, well, look, Charles, I can't thank you enough for being here and being a part of today's podcast. I'm sure that people are going to find everything we talk about interesting. I have found it very interesting. I really appreciate you being here. Want to have you back. Any new breakthroughs, anything happen, give us a call. We'll have you on the show at another point in time. People, if they want to get a hold of you or get a hold of your organization, where do they go?
Yeah, our website, shopgoldleaf.com or goldleaf.org. And we're also on, we love the visual social networks like Instagram and Pinterest. Instagram, Goldleaf without the O, GLDLEAF. You can find us there, see some of the designs we do. Yeah.
Absolutely, sir. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. You've been listening to another podcast of Let's Be Blunt, and where we try our best to give you as much information as we can to help you navigate this space when you're concerned for you and your family. And we give you the information every single day if we can. So thanks a lot for being here. Join us on the next Let's Be Blunt with Montel.